Hey, Edible Lab here, back again with another video. Today I'm going to be making some new potting mix. One that is suited for more tropical plants with certain drainage requirements, or any plants that require better drainage. Regular store-bought potting mix just doesn't really cut it. So I'm going to be sort of making my own mix. I've done it in the past and kind of had it in a video, but I'm just going to sort of do it again. It's going to be a little bit different. I've gained a bit of knowledge, and then we're going to be repotting some plants into it. Perhaps my soursop over there, and some other plants too that kind of need it. Anyway, I'll just get started on what I'm going to be using to make the mix. So for most tropical plants, they really need good drainage. They can't have too much organic matter in the soil because the roots will rot, and that is that I've had quite a lot of plants die to root rot as a result of using just regular store-bought potting mix. It works great for some plants, and some plants, like more tropical plants, it doesn't work as well, or plants that require good drainage, because eventually it breaks down. It has a lot of like bark in it, and it breaks down into sludge sometimes, and it just will kill the plant. So there's three main things I'm going to use, and I am actually going to also use a bit of soil slash potting mix, but maybe it'll just be a very small component. Otherwise, I've got perlite, great drainage. It's coarse too, which will help improve the drainage even more. I've got cocoa peat or cocoa coir. You can also use the chip sort of version, but this is proper like sort of peat, like that. And then I've got river sand. Must be river sand, can't be any other sand for growing plants. But yeah, I'm going to mix these up, and the ratio I'm going to try is I'm going to use, and the main thing here, other than organic matter that's going to hold the water, is, or hold some water at least, because it needs to hold a bit of water, is going to be this cocoa peat. And then we're going to have perlite and sand. So the main portion is going to be cocoa peat. I'm probably going to do 2 parts cocoa peat to 1 part perlite to maybe 1 part sand. And I'm just going to mix it up using this bucket. This bucket's like 9 liters or something, and so I'm going to mix it up in this wheelbarrow. Caution, if you are going to do this yourself, these are really, really bad to breathe in. They do recommend that you wear like a mask for working with compost and regular potting mix. I normally don't, but for this, it is really important to have a proper mask, because perlite is, like asbestos, a silica sort of based material, and it will produce silica dust, which is really, really bad to breathe in. So if you are going to do this, please wear a mask. It would just be best. I mean, you can do it without a mask, but you may have long-term health complications. Same for something like this. It's super dusty. It's not good to breathe in. You can try and wet it a lot to reduce the dust as well, and that's another option, but I still think it's probably good to wear a mask, so I'm wearing a mask. Like an N95 or P2 mask is really what you want for this kind of level of particulate, the dust. But yeah, I'll get into mixing it and show what the finished mix looks like. Alright, so skip forward a little bit ahead. We've mixed up some potting mix now. As you can see, looks kind of like this. And, observe it, see what it looks like. How does it feel? Feels pretty loose. There's a lot of, it's very much cocoa coir. And let's, if the drainage is what we care about, let's test the drainage and see how well it drains. Oh. No water's been put on this, just a little bit to reduce the dust from the perlite, but if I fill this with water, how quick does it drain? Pretty quick. It's drained now. pretty quick. Now, it's very fine, that coir, so some of it's already coming out the bottom. There is a reasonable amount of perlite, and that's mainly what's left. Some sand has also come out the bottom. Often these washed river sands have a bit of silt on them. So, okay. Well, there's a lot of coir. Maybe I could add a little bit more perlite, is what you could think, and then you can adjust from there. No two batches are going to be the same, like any recipe, really. And, you know, even if you bought it from the store, they're made in a factory, and their batches are going to slightly differ from time to time as well. Speaking of recipes, you can really put a variety of different things, whatever you want. Other things that you could put in if you didn't want to use certain materials. Well, another substitute for coco coir is peat moss. They sort of provide the same effect. They provide some moisture retention. They give acidity to the soil, which a lot of tropical plants prefer acidic soil. You could also use this on Australian natives because they prefer acidic soil. Most Australian soil, I think pretty much all Australian soil, is naturally acidic and pretty well draining. A lot of Australian native plants like a sandy, nutrient poor soil, and that's what this would be. There's no organic matter currently in the soil, but it will hold water because of the coco coir, and it will drain well because of the sand and the perlite. Other substitutions could include, you know, different types of river sand. If you had one that had a bit more gravel, or stuff like gravel, or pumice to provide aeration. That's what the perlite is kind of doing here, but pumice does it very well. You could put in charcoal as well, horticultural charcoal. You could put in vermiculite, which also holds a lot of water, good water retention. Again, it's got similar downsides to perlite in that it's like a rock type material, so the dust is not great to breathe in, but it's good. Basically, what I'm making is kind of a mix that you could use for hydroponics. So an ideal mix is almost like a hydroponic type mix with no actual soil, or with as little soil as possible. And this is if you're growing in pots. If you're growing in the ground, it doesn't matter anywhere near as much. You can, well, you would want to improve the soil and obviously ensure you have good drainage. So you could use some of these materials, but what I'm making here is a potting mix because I grow virtually everything in pots. So if you're growing in pots, you do want to have to water. With this, you will have to water more often than if you used regular soil. However, in a pot, the water, if it stays in the pot and doesn't drain away very easily, it's much easier for the plants to get conditions like root rot and then die, compared to being in the ground. The other advantage of pots is you can move them around much easier. Yeah, but pumice, vermiculite, charcoal, scoria, you could even use stuff like aerated clay. Any hydroponic type media will be good to put in this kind of potting mix, but I think something like sand is an absolute must. A good mix should always include some sand, something like perlite, vermiculite, or pumice, some kind of rock type material or scoria to improve the drainage and make it more coarse, and then something like peat moss or coco coir to hold some moisture, but also then, yeah, provide better soil conditions, something that holds it together a little more. And then, oh well, you could say, what are you going to do about, like, if you want to have some nutrients here? There's no real nutrients in this soil. Well, if you want to have fertilizer, use a liquid-based fertilizer, or apply it to the top and put your compost around the top and then water it in. The nutrients in it will dissolve and gradually go down into the mix. They'll be absorbed into the cococoya or into the roots naturally, rather than the roots sitting in that organic material, which then breaks down and then rots, and then the roots in turn break down and rot as well, which you don't want. So compost is great, obviously. You want nutrients. The plants need nutrients to grow, but just apply it to the top and mulch the top as well. That will improve the moisture retention as well, but the water will be able to drain away in a good mix like this. Not that this mix is anywhere near perfect, and I'm still learning too, and I'm still going to adjust it over time, but you really want as little. And this is a caveat. The caveat of this is not you're not growing vegetables. This is if you want to grow trees, particularly tropical, subtropical fruit trees, or any plant, like kind of plants, trees, in pots for a long period of time. This is the kind of mix that will give you more success than regular store-bought potting mixes. But it does depend on the individual needs of each plant, so you do have to know a bit about what you're growing as well. Anyway, that's about all for this video. That's me rambling about potting mix, but I'll be potting up and repotting some plants, and then I'll show them off in other videos. But until then, that's all. Bye bye. Actually, hold on. Show's not over. I'll show an actual example. Here we have one of my seedling white sapote trees. It's going really well. It was in this 200ml pot, and I'm going to pot it up now into this 300ml pot. It was in my previous mix of perlite, sand, and cocoa chip coir, and you can see, you might think, oh, it's really loose, but the roots, once they grow, they hold it all together. And as you can see, it has some organic matter, but not a lot, not that much at all. In fact, a lot of this is, I added compost to the top, and yeah, eventually over time, soil, if you add it to the top, it will gradually migrate down as it rains and gets watered in. But anyway, I filled this pot with some of my new mix, and I'm gonna just put it in. There we go, up to there, and I'll fill it up, and then I'll give you an example of, I'll add some fertilizer on as well. So this is just a seedling white sapote. It's got some nice new growth, and these seedling trees grow super vigorous, so I'm sure within another year it will have filled out this pot. But if we just, fill this up, get some of the old soil in there too. And you can see that's just compost. There's like eggshells and other bits in there. So you don't need the tree to be sitting in the compost. It just needs to be at the top, so then when it gets watered in, the tree will still have access to those nutrients and all the good stuff that's in the compost. It's just not that the roots are in direct contact with it. So now this is all potted up, and you could at this point, or in the near future, mulch around, and I probably will later on mulch with some sugarcane mulch, not on the trunk, not touching the trunk, just around the outside to hold in some moisture retention, but also for those hot days to keep the roots cooler, which is good for the roots. So even in pots, not just your garden beds, but even in pots, if you're going to be growing some of these things, mulch does make a difference. It does make a difference. Even with a mix like this, which drains really well, it will mean you don't have to water quite as much, which is good, especially when the water will drain through this a lot faster than regular soil. But it also keeps the roots cool when it's hot, and keeps it holds in the moisture. Anyway, so I'll show now what I'm going to do is, now that I've transplanted this, I will give it seaweed solution. Not only does this help with the transplant shock, but it has nutrients in it. And I'm going to give it some other liquid fertilizer and some slow release solid granule fertilizer. So if I just give it, you know, a small handful like this, and all you really need to do is just put some around and just mix it in lightly to the surface of the soil. You don't want to do this when it's too hot, but it's been cool today, so it should be fine, under 30 degrees or like 90 something Fahrenheit, low 90s. So now that's mixed in. Got some roots visible there, just covered that up a little bit, and you can see that it's also slightly above grade. This is another important thing if you want to avoid your plants getting root rot. Plant them slightly above grade so that if you do get lots and lots of rain, or you water a lot, the water will drain and more of the water will accumulate lower down here rather than where the roots are around here. So it will drain off more and you won't get the roots rotting up to here, that is what's going to kill your plant, if the roots rot up to the base. Anyway, I'll now give this a good watering in, and then give it some of the liquid fertilizers I showed earlier. But then this should be good to go, should bounce back and should put on some good growth, and eventually it'll fill up this pot too. Anyway, that's sort of the add-on to the video, but that's really all, and I'll got a lot of new things to show off, so look forward to that in the upcoming videos. Until then.